Hi, this is Dr. Betsy Greenleaf, and we're back for another episode of Body, Mind, Spirit. I'm very excited because today we're going to be speaking with Brandy Gillmore. She's got her PhD in natural healing, and her story is absolutely amazing, and I cannot wait to discuss this further. So thank you so much, Brandy, for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I love that you do this Mind, Body, Spirit show. It's just awesome.
So how did you start your healing journey?
You know, it is the last thing I ever thought I would be doing. You probably could have said that I would be an astronaut first, and I would have believed you. um, I was actually basically I had been doing network engineering operations, and I loved what I did. I was very passionate about it, enjoyed it, and I got in an accident. Well, technically two. I had a car accident and then I also had a fall. And basically I went from living a full life, traveling on the weekends, working fully, living life to just its fullest, to being stuck, wheelchair, walker, cane. Most of my days were in bed, on morphine. And that was my life. And it was literally the last thing that you just don't think, oh, this is going to happen to me. But it did. And I started going through, my doctors. Of course, you go to your doctors. I was in and out of the hospital on, a lot of different medications. And long story short, my doctors told me that there was nothing that they could do for me. And I was getting like nerve ablations, infusions, injections, all of that, and on morphine every day. And I was still just in so much pain that I didn't even want to move or breathe. And that was my life. And so basically, after years of them saying, there's nothing they could do, I then started, going the normal path. I going, okay, vitamins and supplements. And I tried like every single cleanse and fasting and everything I could think of, but that wasn't working either. And so what ultimately happened is I just started looking at all these other hospitals, like, okay, well, what about Israel? What about healing in Mexico? What about like the Amazon rainforest? What is anything? I was willing to do anything to get better. And the hospital that I had been going to called me and said I could be part of like this brand new study. And I thought, oh my God, this is it. I'm going to get my life back. Because that's what I was hoping for, is that somebody would discover something new and I could get my life back. And so I remember like literally counting down the days to this study, thinking, oh my God, this is going to happen. And even when I went to go into the hospital that day, it was like I cared what I wore. Like I felt like I was going to get my life back after all these years. So they wheel me into the hospital in my wheelchair and they start getting me all prepped for this procedure. And I'm literally like laying in the hospital bed going, oh my God, I'm going to go get to see these people. I'm going to go do that and all of the things that I'm going to get to do. And the doctor, he walks in and he says, Miss Gillmore, I know your doctors tried really hard to get you in this study. I've re-reviewed your chart and we don't expect you to get better. You can't be a part of the study. And I don't remember leaving the hospital that day. I don't remember the next few days, but the next memory I have is I was literally like laying in that same bed and that I've been in for years. And I was just like, what's the point? It was just like on a good day, I could get around with a wheelchair walker or a cane. And on a bad day, I was in bed all day. And it was just like, what kind of quality of life is this? This isn't a quality of life. And at that moment, I just thought I just wanted to be done with life. But I had like this thought or voice in my head or whatever you want to call it to say, well, Brandy, what about the placebo? And it was like, and I thought about that. And it was like leading up to the study, I had been thinking, please don't get the placebo. Please don't get the placebo. I want the real treatment. And so in that moment, I thought, wait a second, what about the placebo? If it's a known fact that the placebo works, and we've seen that proven more than anything in history, then there was still some chance that I could possibly get better. And I thought, all I have to do is figure out the placebo. And I thought, well, yeah, what are the chances? But there was like some hope. And then in that moment, I was like, I can't give up. There's hope. And so that was pivotal for me. And that's what really started this whole journey.
That's absolutely amazing. And then so you were actually able to heal yourself and get out of the wheelchair. And now you are able to walk, without any assistance.
You know what?
They said you wouldn't be able to do this ever again.
Yeah, like I can do everything. I can walk, run. It was funny because as I was even getting better and, had learned to use my mind, it was like literally life showed up in so many ways to support me once I started figuring it out and really getting it. Because we've all heard of like things like meditation and breathing and thinking positive and visualizing. And I was doing all that stuff for years too. And that wasn't working. And so it was like, but once I did find that pivotal switch that then helped me to start really creating the change, it was like, even as far as physical strength and all of that, everything just started unfolded beautifully. I mean, bodybuilders at my gym started asking me, do you want to work out with me? So like, I was like sitting there, like leg pressing hundreds of pounds. And like, I mean, it just went a radical shift in a beautiful way.
It's amazing because I'm constantly trying to incorporate this in my medical practice. And it's difficult because I try to tell people stories like it's like the Wizard of Oz, like the power's in you all the time, like find your ruby slippers. But I don't know how to really get that idea across. Or, for example, like you were saying, you were trying the meditation and all the things that people say work. So what like flipped the switch for you? What actually were you able to figure out, like how to access that healing portion of the brain?
Absolutely. And what it was that I was, trying the meditation and the energy and the picturing this and all of these things. And I had been, as I mentioned, prior to my injury, I did network engineering. And so I'm very methodical in my way of thinking and troubleshooting. So when I did that, what I did all day was I did troubleshooting of networks. And so I was like, okay, if I'm troubleshooting the network of my mind and my body to figure this out, I started breaking it down. And I thought, okay, look, I've been meditating for years. I've been bringing in the positive. I've been doing my gratitude, write my affirmations, doing all this stuff, and it's not working. So I thought, okay, I know the mind works though, because I started looking at anomalies like, for example, people with multiple personality disorder. And somebody with multiple personality disorder could have different ailments when they were in different personalities. And I was like, okay, WTF, like that doesn't make sense. Like,
what throws me off with that is that one personality could have an allergy to a food, and that same physical person can eat that same food, but if they're another personality, they don't have that allergy. And that blows my mind.
Oh yeah, and asthma, or even body temp, eyesight. Did you see there's some even with eyesight where somebody can be extremely almost blind in one, and then in the other one they can see just fine.
It definitely blows my mind.
So when I looked at that and I saw between the placebo and that, and even just amputees still having pain, I was like, okay, look, it has to be in the mind. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to break it down really simple. All right, how does the mind, like, where can I see this at? And I was like, okay, well, emotions. Somebody's embarrassed, their face turns red. Somebody can be nervous stomach, or sexual thought, sexual physical response, different from men or women, anxiety, racing heart, shortness of breath. And I thought, okay, yeah, we know that. And I thought, but how much can emotions really affect the body? We all know this. And that was kind of my feeling of it all. And then I was thinking, okay, well, there's the widowhood effect, where a senior can actually die when they lose a spouse, or broken heart syndrome, and I started looking even at things like scared to death and bored to death. And I thought, these were just a figure of speech. I was so bored to death, but people can actually die from boredom. And I thought, well, wait a second here. If we know that embarrassment or anxiety or sexual thought or boredom or broken heart syndrome what about all the other emotions? If these 5 emotions we know that can affect us, the physical body, 5 or whatever emotions can affect the physical body, even to the point of death, what about hurt? What about resentment? What about anger? What about sadness, loneliness? What are these doing in the physical body? And so what I did ultimately is I start saying, okay, there's some type of something that must be going on in my subconscious mind that I'm not familiar with. And let me figure out what that is. And what was interesting, because I had been in a physical accident, physical injury. And I thought, so part of me was still like, well, it can't possibly be my thoughts because I have a physical accident. I had a physical injury. But yet, when I began working with my mind, it healed my body. And that's what I do to this day, is I help people do exactly that. I help them pinpoint the specific thing. And that's what I'm most known for, is I'll show people how to release their pain in minutes using only their mind by just pinpointing those specific things.
That's amazing. And we'll find out more from you about this after we take a commercial break.
Mr. Happy Living here. I love good things made by good people. That's why I love Dry Farm Wines. I first met the man known as the healthiest wino on earth back in 2016. He claimed Dry Farm Wines don't cause headaches or hangovers, and that he started his company because 99% of wine consumed in the US is highly processed and loaded with nasties. Like most processed food, it's toxic. That very night, I made a big health decision. Toxic wines out, natural wines in. It's been nearly 5 years since I made the switch, and I feel great. Go to happyliving.com, select Partners in Happy, and get your first bottle of natural wine for 1 penny. And I'll donate 8% of every order placed for the entire month of March to WYTV7. So share the gift of natural wine with a friend. It'll make you both happy.
All right, welcome back as we're talking with Brandy Gillmore. So Brandy, yeah, I wanted to like pick your brain on this because this is just this stuff excites me so much. Because it just, the power of the brain and how it can affect our body is just seems to me like it's really the secret to overall health that a lot of times we ignore in traditional medicine because we're so focused on treating the body. But I think a lot of times we forget, like, treat the brain and everything else will follow. So, if you could give us, I mean, some of your secrets of how does somebody like get to this point? Like, I'm still fascinated with like, okay, how do we access that portion of the brain?
I'm with you. I totally agree. And this is what's interesting. So technically, the science started studying even the emotions with the body and the immune system over 50 years ago. Even if we look at psychoneuroimmunology, I mean, back in the 70s, it was shown that stress affects the immune system, can affect the white blood cells. So we know, and that was proven almost 50 years ago, that stress affects the immune system. But I think what happens is exactly what you said, is this, that it's tricky. And it is. And I think that that's part of the reason it's not really integrated, is that people haven't figured out how to get real results. And that's what I went through with mine, is going, okay, look, there's all this stuff, but how do I just get real results? And what it came down to is this, is that, when you stop and think about it, we can see that somebody's stressed and it can definitely affect their health. But we can also see somebody who's going through a lot of stress who's not sick. Again, WTF, like, how does that work? And basically what I figured out is it's a certain combination of emotions in the subconscious mind. So the easiest way to really illustrate that would be to think about, if you have flour, you can't make cake. But if you have flour and you mix it with eggs and butter, or vegan eggs and butter, or whatever, and you mix it, other ingredients, you can make cake. And so what happens is, obviously a health issue is much different than cake, but when we have a certain combination of emotions in the mind, that's what then ultimately impacts the physical body. And what's really brilliant about it, is when you stop and think about it, I mean, healing with the mind has been around for thousands of years. Like, even if we look at the Bible says in it, a merry heart is a medicine to the body. Ill thoughts will dry the bones. Well, merry heart, happiness; ill thoughts, stress. That was written in Proverbs 3,000 years ago. And yet we haven't mastered it, or there's other areas, of spirituality or metaphysics or all of these things. So even, our conventional medicine, we all know stress affects the body. And so it's a few things. It's about understanding and identifying the specific combination. So that's key. Just like, let's say that I have anxiety really bad and I'm going, oh, I should work on my feeling of hurt. Well, I should probably work on anxiety first if I want that to go away. And so to get rapid results, we need to identify the specific targeted emotion and really shift that. And I see it all of the time with things like, I've taken people who were nearly blind and helped shift their mindset, and then they can see. I have taken a woman who had a tumor in her throat. We had one 1-hour session, and she had an MRI. She was going in for surgery the next day.
Wow.
Her and I worked for an hour. It was gone. The ENT was like, I've never seen anything like this in my 30 years of experience. I see all kinds of things, not because I'm so amazing, but because we're all just that amazing. Our minds are truly incredible, and it's about zeroing in on that specific thing.
That is absolutely amazing. And you also got to think, like, when this happened to you, when you had your injury, there's so many people that kind of go down that road, like, why me? I'm the victim. But thank God you like persevered and was like, I'm not giving up. Because
oh, don't get me wrong, I went down that road. It just didn't lead anywhere. I just got to that road, and then it scared me because my mindset got in a really bad place, and I was like, oh God, this is not a good road.
Yeah. So, I think it's tough because sometimes I'm like, well, how do you even identify what is the emotion that's really keeping you stuck? Because maybe there's a bunch of things, or maybe people are just so like confused and overwhelmed that they just don't even know where to start.
I would agree. And a lot of times what I would tell people is to start at least putting in the positive. And even, when you start to see people who, and that's a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take people and I'll help them get out of pain and release pain in minutes. And so you can actually see the power of your mind. And then what happens is your brain, after you start seeing and you start really getting how powerful our thoughts are, you don't really want to put your mind in the negative anymore. You start going, oh, wait a second, let me not do that. And so for me, it's really, and the thing I always have people do is I like to have people start bringing in the positive first, because even let's say that you do start, when you're in a negative space, it's harder to identify the negative because there's so much negative, you know what I mean? And so, so I would say that for one is, and one way I have people do that is even just by taking like a song and listening to it and purposely bringing in the feeling from it. Like, for instance, one of the songs that I did going through my injury was a song by U2, and it's called A Beautiful Day. It's a beautiful day. Are you familiar with that song?
Yeah.
So I got to tell you, I did not feel like it was a beautiful day, but I knew that I needed to start lifting. And so I would listen to that song and I would start bringing in, okay, it's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. And start bringing that in. I would also say that some things are a bit, what's the word for it? A bit kind of logical. Like you can kind of figure it out based on the body part. For instance, for eyes, a lot of times it has to do with something of not wanting to see or being afraid to see, or different things like that. Of course, so that's something with your eyes. As far as like the pelvic area, that a lot of times can have to do with marriage or relationships or resentment or children. I mean, there's a lot of things. A lot of times that has to do with the home and feminine type of energy and whatnot. Yeah, and really creating that shift in that area is key.
It's interesting too. I want to recommend that everybody watch your TEDx talk too, because that was really eye-opening. You were also talking about like the positions that we put our body in and how that affects, like in reverse, how our physical can then affect our mind. And like I tell patients this sometimes, that when we smile, our brain goes, oh, wait, you're physically smiling. I must be happy. So now I'm going to make happy hormones. And for a while, the makers of Botox were actually trying to get Botox approved for the treatment of depression, because they found out that when people were getting it cosmetically and they couldn't frown, that they were reporting symptoms of happiness. When I tell people it's a lot cheaper just to smile when but yeah.
You're like, let me just give everybody Botox.
Yeah. So they didn't get approved for that, by the way. So, yeah. But it was a good example of like in your TEDx talk, you were talking about how like you said, like kind of like hunch over, and if do you feel confident, when you're hunched over. So
absolutely, it just, and even, because I was very injured and every movement hurt. So I even just started working with the physiology of even my hands and being purposeful in moving my hands in a more blissful, like, and I still move my hands a lot these days. Exactly that. I started doing that, and that, whatever you can do is key. And even shoulders back, smiling more, that can help, because part of what happens is that the best way to put it is if you think of your conscious mind as being like the mom and your subconscious mind as being like a screaming baby. If the mom is really, 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 really stressed and overwhelmed and upset, and now she has to deal with the screaming baby, it's not quite optimal. But if you can even get your conscious mind to start feeling more positive and looking towards the positive, even consciously, where you start focusing and you start keeping your mind there even more, then what happens is that then, of course, a mother who's happy and lifted can then deal with the screaming baby and do a much better job. And so what happens ultimately is the more you lift your conscious mind, then it's easier to understand and see what your baby needs and how to shift it and how to really get out of that. And so that's why you always want to start with just lifting.
That's a really good way to explain it too. It gives like a really good visual that seems more doable,
Exactly. Because if your mom's upset and she's really upset and now the baby's screaming and crying, it's like, oh my God, this is overwhelming. And that's how most people would feel if they're in a negative place and then they're trying to look and address what's in their subconscious mind on top of everything. And so to me, it's like, I always recommend people lift first, get your mind in a positive place, then start looking at what's going on in your subconscious.
I find even for myself that sometimes when my brain's in that negative place, it almost becomes like a broken record. And it's sometimes very difficult to break that internal dialogue of like, I'm not worthy, or this is never going to work, or, I give up. Do you have any suggestions on how to break that repetitive negative dialogue?
I just did an episode on my podcast where there was this woman who as soon as I went to go work with her to help her shift out of pain, she had neck pain and she had neck pain and head pain. And so that's what was stuck for her. So as soon as I checked into her energy and just kind of got, okay, look, worked with helping her identify what it was, there was this big feeling of feeling not good enough, really big feeling of feeling not good enough, right? And I asked her, I said, do you notice that feeling? She was like, oh my God. And she's like, yeah. And I was like, how high? She's like, off the charts. Right. And I said, exactly. And so what I did is I said, okay, well, why don't you bring in the feeling that you are good enough? And what happened is her ear had already been ringing, and her ear started ringing even more and more and more. Okay. So it didn't even want to bring it in. But so I said, wait a sec, let's stop that. And I said, let's bring in the feeling of deserving, that you actually deserve to feel good enough. Okay. So basically she had a feeling of guilt. So she had a pattern of guilt since she was like 2, of guilty for this and guilty for that. And so what can happen is that when we have patterns of punishment, patterns of different things like that, it can block us from bringing in the positive. And so the mind is like, it's what I call like the deserving gateway. Like, so the mind, the way it works is that you have to open certain parts of the mind to be able to deal with other parts of the mind. And the easiest way to think about that is that if you want to walk through the kitchen in a house, it's pretty easy. But if you never open the front door to go in the house, it's pretty hard. And so what happens is there's just certain ways to work with the mind. And so, so I would say, as far as some of these worthy patterns and stuff like that, instead of working on, okay, I am good enough. And she had been writing the affirmations, I'm good enough, I am worthy, I'm deserving, all of that. What she really had to do was address that guilt pattern. And as soon as she did, and it was great because it was right on the podcast. Like she was going, like she had a level of off the charts, she said, of not feeling good enough. And I said, okay, well, let's shift this pattern of guilt. And now what's your level? She was like, oh my God, it's a 1 of not feeling good enough. And she had been working on it for years, and it shifted that quick. And so did her pain, and her pain was gone also. And so, so that's what I would say is when those patterns are stuck, look at really feeling deserving and like you're a good person.
That is really amazing. Yeah.
Right. Just feeling in integrity and feeling like a good person goes so far.
You know, where can people, like I said, I could talk to you for hours on this because I find this stuff absolutely fascinating, but where can people find out more information about you?
You know, they can go to my website, which is brandygillmore.com. And they could also go listen to the podcast, because you'll actually see the very things you're talking about, just and actual results, like, okay, healing and releasing pain and creating that shift with all kinds of things. And just, you'll see the power of the mind in action.
I'm actually really excited to go find your podcast and start listening to this, because I think it's just going to be completely eye-opening. And I think anybody can benefit from this. I mean, you don't have to necessarily be in a pain situation or a dire situation. I think any health condition is so much, you know, attached to, you know, the health and brain wellness. So
Absolutely, every condition, you're spot on. I mean, everything. I mean, there's that woman that I mentioned with the tumor. She's on there on episode like 10. I mean, it's just, you're so right. It's everything is connected.
So are you on social media that people can follow you there too?
I am on Instagram, and I'm also on Facebook and Twitter at Brandy Gillmore. And so Brandy is with a Y and Gillmore is with 2 L's.
That is awesome. And I just want to remind everybody that if you're enjoying this show, that make sure you go to WYTV7.org and check out not only my show, but also the other programs that they do. If you feel moved, then there is an option to make a donation, and your donations go to not only supporting programs like this, but also supporting the community. We have a lot of different scholarships and community programs that we support. Also, you can, if you want to find out more information about me, go to drbetsygreenleaf.com. Follow me on social media and in many different ways. Unfortunately, mine are different titles depending on the social media. And I don't know if you're on, Brandy, but the newest thing I've been doing is Clubhouse, where we've been having some open discussion rooms on there that have been really, really fun.
I love that. I'll have to meet you there sometime. I have so many people that have been like, okay, let me give you a tour. And my schedule has been funnily busy. It was just my birthday and different things come up. So I haven't yet done it, but I'll have to meet you there sometime.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm still learning it, but it's definitely fun. And happy birthday for a recent birthday.
Oh, why, thank you.
And once again, I just wanted to thank Brandy Gillmore for being with us today, and definitely go check out her TEDx and her website and, find your healing today.
Betsy, I love this. I love what you do, and you're just precious. You're so precious. It's been wonderful connecting with you.